This exhibition, which as Terry had mentioned, I have been working on for almost 20 years, and it took a long time to come to fruition, and it is particularly exciting that now the exhibition, which opened at the Phillips Collection in Washington in February and was there until May, is now opening in the backyard of two of these major artists, Ossorio and Pollock. Two of these artists are extremely well known. There are, Dubuffet, Jean Dubuffet, probably one of the most famous artists in France and also in this country, and of course Jackson Pollock, who is extremely well known. And then we have Alfonso Ossorio, who is a little better known out here than he was in Washington, for instance, as he lived most of his life out in East Hampton. But what was not known, really, was that there was this incredible intense friendship, especially during the years of 1948 to 52, that all three artists really were very close and kind of had this wonderful creative dialogue going on. He collected other artists, but it was really Dubuffet and Pollock that he supported, and he became increasingly known as a collector and lesser known as an artist, to the point that by the time that I wanted to do this show in the early 90s, a lot of people would say, Ossorio, I thought he was just like a dilettante or a Sunday painter. He was a collector. He was very wealthy. His family owned a big sugar refinery, and so he had the means to do that. But I think it really overshadowed his accomplishments as an artist. And now he did very clearly change his art when he met both Pollock and Dubuffet. He adopted some elements of their work, but nevertheless, you can always tell an Ossorio is not the same as a Dubuffet or a Pollock. They're very distinctly his own. He has a very distinct style. He introduced some very interesting stylistic and iconographic elements into his work that are distinctly his own. This wall here is a wall of all works on paper that Ossorio made in the Philippines. Now, as I mentioned, he was born in the Philippines to a very wealthy family, and I guess what they did at the time, they would send their children to Europe to be educated, so they sent Ossorio from the Philippines to London to boarding school when he was 8 years old. And he never returned until he was 34. So when he was in his 30s, he was already an artist, making a lot of art. His family asked him to come back to paint a mural in a chapel they were building for their workers in the sugar refinery. That was the first time he returned to the Philippines. I think it was very difficult for him to do that, having been away so long. Also, he was a devout Catholic, which is one of the reasons why they asked him to do that, but he was also gay. And in the Philippines, while he was doing that mural for about 8 months, he started making several hundred works on paper like these. These are a good sample. And with these are really the works that defined him, where he would use wax to draw on paper, cover it with watercolor, then the watercolor would be rejected by the wax, then he would scrape off the wax once it's dry, then he would do the process over, and so he would be able to create very subtle layering and a very subtle transparency effect with these works. Plus, he would start tearing and cutting the paper, both the outsides and incisions on the inside. Like you can see that green, very abstract piece, and the head of Christ. These are not, scars. These are incisions where you can see the black paper in the background. All these things were very innovative, and that's something that all three artists had in common. They were all three extremely interested in experimentation and process. And Dubuffet fell in love with these works and decided to publish a book on these, what we now call Victoria's drawings that were made in Victoria's Philippines on that island. When you look at this drawing, it uses the same kind of gesturing, the same kind of that he did with the trips. It has that kind of things in those. But these are figures. They're in there. They just denser and denser and denser. He built more and more, so it's very compact. It's kind of like, I see it kind of like those landscapes of Dubuffet that are so compacted and compressed, so it becomes abstract. You have figures in here, but also you have a lot of gestural and kind of abstract elements. But I think they're there, and he always said they're there, and I think that he thought in a figurative way when he started to draw. I don't think that he was not what one would call a lyrical abstractionist, someone that would just kind of like close their eyes and just let the arm move, and everything he did, every motion that he did, he was drawing. Then the overall effect, it became so dense that it was kind of covered up, and that it became an abstract, quote unquote, or non-figurative, non-representational trip. But I still see it as, I don't see a contradiction there.
And we're here in the warehouse district of Southampton with Nikki Vanas in a very special place that not too many people get to see. This is the Ossorio Foundation building, which has works from the estate of Alfonso Ossorio, with the subject of a tri-artist exhibition now at the Parrish, along with Dubuffet and Pollock. But we came here to see the Ossorios in a little more depth. Can you tell us about these two works that introduce your display here in the foundation?
Well, we tried to put together a retrospective of Alfonso's work spanning from about 1982 down to the works that were shown at the Parrish and the Phillips,
right,
that go from 48 to 50.
So we can see some of those, and then see where it left off, and
right,
continue on.
That's right. But up front here, what we did was we juxtaposed two works. One oil from 1959 with a congregation,
yes,
or an assemblage that he did in 1979. So it was a 20-year span.
And the congregations are distinguished by lots of found objects,
yes,
glittery, colorful,
yes,
all aggregated on these, on what? What are they on exactly?
Well, a lot of them are done on masonite because they were so heavy, which only made them heavier. But they're very intricate and really draw you in. You can spend a lot of time enjoying these works.
Yes, these things we didn't see at the Parrish. We heard about them a little bit, and now we have an opportunity to see some of these very outlandish in some ways, but colorful and energetic works. You were telling me that this was an early one.
This one is from the mid-60s, and you can see a lot of the sort of nautical theme, a lot of the shark. See the shark's teeth in this? This has more a kind of a marine feel to it. Alfonso really was a wine connoisseur, and one of his favorite dessert wines was Chateau Yquem. So this was done in 1982. But if you go up closer, you can see he had labels.
People do collect their labels, but this is not the way people usually employ them. And one of the things you mentioned to me when we were talking is that you're hoping that the Parrish show will in some way redress the balance. Ossorio, who you knew as a kind of uncle, your uncle was Ted Dragon, his partner, was known so much as a patron that in a way his artworks got overshadowed by his more famous colleagues who were in the Parrish show. Tell me what you're feeling about what this show is doing for that reputation.
Well, I really think this show did a wonderful job of creating a dialogue between all three of them. And what we've been delighted to see, now it's too early to tell because the Parrish show just opened, or is just really opening to the public on Saturday. But at the Phillips, the response to Ossorio has just been so gratifying. Especially the works on paper from the 50s, they just have captivated people, and he's really just emerging as an artist in his own right.
You have whole drawers full of these works in your archives, in your drawers here, and I think you pulled out a couple for me. If they're still there, I'd kind of like to show them off. And these works are incredibly vibrant. There were some examples in the Parrish show all along one wall, which to me was the power wall of the show. It was the one that really riveted me the most.
You know, he was commissioned to do this incredible mural in the Philippines. But at night, he just had all of this pent-up energy, and he would continue to work. And he would just work and work and work. There were close to 500 pieces that he did after work. We also have been looking for venues to place these works permanently so that they can be appreciated and spread his legacy a little further. We've had some wonderful success with that. And to go back to museums that may have had a watercolor or a sculpture and deepen the profile, because we do have other works that I think are important to understand Ossorio, to have a deeper understanding. It would be great to have more pieces.
And you do this by sale and also by gift. I mean, there's one, I think, gift to the Parrish in the show. So you're spreading his legacy in many different ways.